Hello everyone. In this video of React tutorial, we're gonna learn about higher order components. To understand more on the higher order components, first we need to understand how JavaScript work as a higher order function. So if we go to the W3 School website, we're gonna see something function as a parameter. So since we can define any function as a primitive data type in JavaScript, and that data itself, the variable itself, can be passed as a parameter of another function. So according to JavaScript, it says that if you create any function which accept a function as a parameter, or it return a function that actually call as a higher order function. So to give example, we can use some example here. So assuming that we have a function called get user, and this will gonna return as a object maybe name equal test user, age equal to maybe 23. Okay, now if we have another function called get profile, what we can do is we can just do the return get user this, and if we constant profile equal to get profile, and we can just log, and if we run it, I'm supposed to have the result here. Let's run this. Let's use JSBin or something. So get user, get profile, get profile. If we run it, we're gonna see that we have this age and name, and then what we can do is, like here, instead of get user, what we can do is pass this get user function itself here as a parameter. Maybe we say that fn as a parameter, and we can run the fn here itself. Okay, and here get profile, we will pass this get user as a parameter. Now this will also work for us. If we just run the console, we'll see that it also work for us. Or what we can do is, like, we can accept any function as a return type also, right? So we can have probably this get profile will return this get user function, and then we need to call get profile something like, then we have to call something like this also, that works. So that's actually a higher order function in JavaScript. So how that work in React as well. So before we talk about that, also maybe we give an example here, some example, like we have this comment list, and we also have this blog post. So looking into this post, if you see, we have a constructor where we get the comments, and before it mount, we have this add listener where handle the changes, will mount, and all the handle changes. So just think about this, like these are the three hooks wherever any changes happen, two hooks wherever change happen, and before it mount and after mount, before even initialize mount. So these two will gonna get the handle changes, and also this in the constructor level it will set the comments at a state level, and it will gonna just display these comments on top of a map. Same thing is a blog post here. So if you see, all this code are same what it's doing. So now this, if we want to present like in a simple React app, we're gonna have to write these two component, and we're gonna just write same line of code multiple time. But this can be improved with a higher order function. So we already know that this data fetched, the data getting part is getting duplicated, and we could have passed this as a props of this component, and the fetching part can be done in single places. That will solve the problem. So how it work is, in React we're gonna do something like we're gonna create a small component called with subscription, and we're gonna pass the type of component. Here we can pass comment or the blog post, and here we pass the data, and we can return another class. If you see, this is whole class we are returning, right? So similar there, we used to return a function when we talk about higher order component in JavaScript. Same in React, we are returning a React component itself on a higher order React HOF function. So this example we can mutate, like we can create a copy of it. So I have tried to do it in a functional way. So initially we have these blog posts where at the initial load, using the effect, we have these two sample fake API call, and on the blog post on the initial constructor level, what we do is that we get the all the post and display over a map in the text component, which is nothing but doing the JSON string file of this whole thing. Similar on the comment list as well. We have this state of the comments, and we are using this effect to load as a constructor level. Similar what is doing here in the constructor, we can use similar feature in a functional component using the use effect hook, and we are just mapping on top of it. And on the app.js, ignore this part for now. We are just displaying this comment list and blog posts, and if we look at the UI, we'll have something, all the list being displayed. We could separate out probably using the, so we have this comment 1 2 3 and then post 1 2 3. Now if we look into this, we notice that this code has been duplicated twice, right? Only changes is that which function to call. So if we could pass this function here as a function parameter, it will solve. We don't have to do all this thing, right? Because here whatever we're doing, we do the same thing in the comment as well. So to recreate, we have this with subscription class we created, and here we have this with subscription where it takes the component, whatever component we want to take, and we take the promise data. This could be anything, right? You just need to pass maybe multiple component or single component up to the use cases. Here we pass the data, like, or it can be a asynchronous data, synchronous data, whatever you want to, and we are defining a function here. Okay, and in this function, this is a totally separate function. If you notice, this is a function and this is function inside another function, and returning the function as well. So that's how, as we mentioned, a higher order component is something where we have a function as a parameter, or we return a function as function from the function. So we have this component where we have these props, and these props will be empty most as of now, and then we just copy from any of this. We copy this effect part where we're gonna load the data. This is where we're loading the data, and we are mapping over this data, and this wrap component we are passing over as a function, right? So you can think about these two function here, and here we are just creating two function with each of the data type, right? So first time we are passing this text and the data, so we have these two service here, and we're exporting this. So now if you notice, instead of each time we call the data and using the effect hooks, in single component we are managing the loading part of the data and setting part of the data. If we enable, since we export this comment and this block, we can just enable these two, and if you notice here we have this working as expected. We have this as expected here. Now I hope this is readable code, and there are few things before we go ahead. So they said that usually when we do a higher order function, we don't mute the data, which means like here is a we receive the component and we can access the component props and everything, right, using the prototype. But this is not something recommended. If we need to do any update of the data, we should do outside of the higher order component or anything, so we don't mute the data. We should have done this something like this, which we have done here. So if you notice, we could have update this everything data and everything in this level. Instead of that, we do in the child component, because if you know about the scope of the JavaScript, if we declare something here and mute here, later it get set over there until we refresh everything. So it's better to do in the component level. And we can pass any of the composition and JavaScript composition method and inheritance, those concept as well as a parameter. So if you notice here in the wrap component, they pass a inject prop and pass through prop both. So this can be done as well. Where do we use it? If you know about in Redux, we have this connect method. So is connect itself is a higher order component here, where as a first time it takes the selector and the action as a parameter, which return a function, and that will gonna take as a comment list as a parameter. So it return a function, this whole connect method, and then that function accept a component as a parameter. So that's how it work on the relay as well, or with router. So you probably have seen this thing in some of the libraries that available. React enhancer also do the similar kinds of concept. So yeah, and this is pretty much used we day-to-day basis. Probably we see this line of code sometimes, like how this connect method accept two function. That's how it work. So to explain this method also, to make it simple, right, we could have done something like this, like, so we could have function get user we couldn't do return. We could have returned this, and then it takes the user probably, and it takes the maybe something, maybe another, maybe person and user. Then we could return the object like this, right? So we could have returned person as a person and user as a user. So now if we call this get user, we can say constant user equal to get user, which will take a function takes as a object as a parameter, since we are using this as an object. So maybe I can pass something a name, Mr. X, and if you notice this will if I print this user, is returning a function, another function. So we can do again const maybe user1 equal to user, then it takes another object as a user, right? So we say Mr. Y. Now if we do console log user1, we will gonna see this whole object is printing a Mr. person as Mr. X, user as Mr. X. Sorry, this one supposed to be user. Yeah, similar that thing has been done in this connect function. If we compare connect, will take one function. Here we pass as a string only, and then it will return another function. So this whole thing can be written as get equal to, let me comment on this line, this can be done something like this also. And now if we log into this user, we'll see that this data is being printed. So I hope this will help to understand more on the higher order function or higher order components in JavaScript as well as in React. That's it.